cello was out of tune anyway, I thought this would be a good time to talk about tuning. Now, there is certainly always the option of using an electric tuner. Sorry, that's my dog. And those can help. You know, the little digital tuners that have the thing that tells you if you're sharp or flat. Those can be very helpful. And if tuning, you know, is an issue for you, get yourself one. It'll save you a lot of grief. But I still think it's really important to learn to tune your cello the old-fashioned way, partially because no one's going to take you seriously as a musician unless you can tune your own instrument. So first thing you need to do is get an A. And actually, I did not think to get a real A, so I'm just going to make it up. I'm saying A is my A, and let's imagine for right now that I have a metronome that's telling me that, or some other, you know, maybe the piano, that's the A from the piano. First, you got to get your A. So let's say it's A. Oh, fancy that. I happen to be really well in tune. All right, so we're not going to worry about that one for now. We're going to assume that I could hear whether it was sharper or lower, and that might not be a safe assumption, but still, let's go with that for now. All right, so then the next step is to tune the D string to match the A string. Right? And if you've been playing the cello for a while, you probably have some sense of what a D should sound like, would normally sound like, you know, A, D, G, C, C. You know, that is something you could just practice singing for yourself to get it in your head, or listen to it on a regular basis, so that becomes, you know, sort of a sound that your ear is accustomed to. But let's say that you know that this is the D. Well, you could just do the double stops, the open strings together. And in fact, I think that's probably the best way to tune, is just to know that, oh, well, it's a little sharp. Okay, so I'm going to move it down. But realistically speaking, not everyone can hear that, especially if you are newer to playing an instrument. So it's helpful to have some other strategies. Now, one that is helpful is the harmonics. Okay, so what I'm going to do is play my harmonic, middle of the string harmonic here on the A string. By harmonic, what I mean is I'm not pushing the string down, right? My finger is just lightly, lightly touching. Okay, gives me that pitch. Harmonics are somewhat flexible in that my finger doesn't have to be in exactly the right place for it to work. But you will find that you'll get your clearest tone if your finger is right on it. So listen to the difference between this, right? Like I can kind of hear the harmonic, and this. Ooh, that's clearer. Okay, so what I'm listening for is that super clear sound. And you might just have to, you know, wiggle around a little in that area until you find it. All right, so there is my harmonic on the A string. Now what I'm going to do is play the same note, is first finger in first position on the D string, also a harmonic. Okay, so what I'm listening for is if those sound the same. And you'll notice that they don't sound the same, okay? So now here's the deal. It is righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, all right, with the fine tuners down here. And tighter makes it higher, looser makes it lower, all right? But again, maybe you're not sure which way to go. Maybe you know that it doesn't sound right, but you're not sure, is it higher or is it lower? I would encourage you just to change it and see if it gets better or worse, all right? Even though I've been playing the cello for a long time, there are still times when I just can't tell what's wrong with it. So I move it, and it either gets better or worse. So let's say for now, I'm not sure, I'm going to move it up. All right, I'm going to make it a little tighter. Let's see if it's any better. Ooh, it is not better, it is worse. So I know I just turned it the wrong direction, okay? So then I could move it down a bit. Let's see. Getting closer. All right, now, before I get any closer, I should tell you there are a couple other strategies beyond this harmonic strategy. All right. Another one is actually, again, with a harmonic, but this time the harmonic on the D string. Same place as I did here, except over one string. I'm going to play that note with my open A, all right? So, I play those as a double stop. And it's just a different interval. It's a fourth in this case. And sometimes, for some people, it's easier to hear. You know, it's often just helpful to have more than one strategy to use. So if one isn't working for you, you have something else to fall back upon. Okay, so very close, but I'm still not totally happy. Okay, let's try one other strategy. Now, this one, I don't really ever do this, but people do, so I'm going to share it with you anyway. You can put your finger right up here on the nut. And by the nut, I mean there's that thing that sort of pops up right on the top of the fingerboard, right? The strings have little grooves in it and they hook into it before they go into the peg box. So what I could do is put my finger right up there at the top of the D string, okay, because that's the string I'm working on tuning. And I can, with the A string, I'm going to, with my finger, just little by little, add a little bit, I'm rolling it down so it starts to make the string higher. And what I can hear is, do I like that higher sound better than where it actually is, or do I like it less? So let's say I've got my finger on the nut, I'm going to start making the string higher. Ooh, and I think the sound of it is getting worse. Okay, what that tells me is that in fact my string is already too high and I need to make it lower, right? And I'm not actually permanently changing the pitch here. I'm just experimenting with, does making it higher help? Or does making it higher make it worse? All right, and in this case, it makes it worse. So again, I know that I need to go lefty-loosey a little bit and make it lower. Okay, now I know that one of the reasons I'm going to have trouble tuning my cello right now is that my G string is dreadfully out of tune. When your string is that far off, there is no other option than to use the pegs. And actually, I really like using the pegs. But people tend to be a little afraid of the pegs. I used to be afraid of the pegs. And on cold weather days, I'm still reluctant to use the pegs because they're more inclined to slip. All right. So how to turn the pegs? Well, one thing you should know is that when you are using the pegs, because these are for sort of bigger adjustments, bigger jobs, you don't want to go too far above the note, because if you go too far above the note, your chances of breaking a string are much higher. Feel free to go low and go way low, but try not to go too far above where you actually need to be. All right, so my preferred way of tuning with the pegs is again to just use the fifths, right? But to get a good grab on it, I need to hold my cello pretty firmly with my knees, okay, so that it's not going to shake around. Put it off to the side a little and grab onto the peg up here, okay? Now this really does take some practice and some getting used to. What I'm going to do, simply turn it like that as I play. That way I can hear it coming, right? I can hear, here it comes, here it comes, here it comes, oops, too far. And you'll notice I keep going below the pitch and then back up. That's to avoid going too high, right? You want to come from below up to the pitch so you don't break a string. Okay, that's pretty close. The other thing I should mention is when you're using, oops, did it just let go? It may have. And part of the reason for that is because it is cold weather today. And what happens when the cold weather, it all shrinks up, the pegs will loosen. You might find on a cold weather day, you open your case and your cello is completely out of tune, like all the strings are loose. Okay, that's just, you know, the shrinkage of the wood, all right? And what you need to do in that case is really when you tune up, you need to also be very firmly pushing in. Sometimes I find that difficult to do from this angle, so I would turn my cello around, and actually I would typically stand up and do this, or shorten my end pin so it was at a better height. But I would, oh, see, it did go. You probably can't see this, but I am with one hand pushing this way, all right? So I'm kind of contrary motion, all right, pushing the cello towards my hand that's tuning, and with the hand that is turning the peg, as I turn it up, I'm very much pushing it in to the peg box, all right? So I also find it helpful to pluck as I go, and right now my muscles are working a little bit. This one's going this way, this one's going this way, jamming it in. And I pluck it as I do it, so that again I can hear it coming and I don't go too terribly high above the note. Another thing to be aware of when you're tuning this way is there's a slight health risk involved, in that if your string does happen to break, which they don't do very often, but if it does break, you know, it could potentially hit you in the face or in the eye. So really that is just something to be cautious and aware of. I don't think you can just avoid tuning this way altogether, but you know, maybe keep your hand sort of covering the strings as you do it. You know, keep this hand over so that if it breaks, your hand will stop it before your face does. And know that you might have to really quickly go, wah! Okay? So anyway, I think that is about all I have to say about tuning. It does take a lot of practice, all right? And you may find that when you're tuning, especially in public, that you start to feel a little shy about, is everyone judging me, that I'm tuning slowly and I can't hear it, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm right, and that makes it that much harder to hear. So I would just say, maybe they are judging you, but that means they're not very nice people. So forget about them, and just take the time you need to do it and do it well. Practice it a lot at home. Don't be afraid of trying those pegs out. They will probably not work for you right away, but eventually it's fun and satisfying to tune with the pegs. So make sure you get that opportunity for yourself. All right, good luck. I realized there was one other tuning strategy I wanted to mention. All right, and I don't really do this myself either, but I know it is helpful for some people. So it's again tuning with the fifths, the open fifths, but to make it so you don't have to play the note, turn it, play the note, turn it, right? That you can hear it while you're turning it. What I've seen people do, and I occasionally do myself, is you take the cello and you put it so it's resting on your left leg, okay? So you are going to need something to make sure that it's firmly rooted to the ground. You have an end pin strap or a sharp end pin or something. Then you take this left arm and you reach it in front of your cello, okay? And I'm going to put my bow on the strings, go ahead and play, and reach over my arm so I can turn the fine tuners as I do. My fine tuners are a little stuck, so they don't really want to turn. But that is an option you have as well, okay? So you bow in front, arm over the bow, under is not so comfortable, though I've seen people do that too. And then you can hear the pitch moving, changing as you are tuning, which is sometimes a nice thing. All right, so that really is it. Thank you. I take it back. There are two more things about tuning that I should probably mention. Thing number one is, yes, I started with the A string, right? I tuned that to some external source of an A that told me what a real A is, and then I tuned each string down from that, right? So I tuned the D to match the A, then the G to match the D, then the C to match the G, all right? Now assume, though, that once you get down to the bottom, the chances that something on the top will have changed as the tension on the instrument changed, the chances are pretty high. So once you do get to the bottom and you're satisfied, just make sure you go back and check, is the A and D, are they still where I put them in the first place, okay? So once you get down to the bottom, check all your strings again to make sure they are still in tune. All right, that's thing number one I wanted to mention. Thing number two is, oh yes, all right, so sometimes it happens that just no matter what you do, you cannot get your instrument in tune. And you might consider that that could indicate that one of your strings is false, all right? It's just old, it needs to be replaced. All right, and the way to test that, and I can't really show you because my strings are in more or less okay shape. If you play the note, all right, and take your bow off the string, that ring that you hear afterwards, that overtone, if the string needs to be replaced, you will hear that pitch wavers, all right? And my A string kind of does it. My strings are definitely old, but I don't know if you'll really be able to hear this, but just listen for once I take my bow off the string, that the pitch is a little flexible, all right? Yeah, see how it just kind of waves around a little bit? That's a sure sign that your strings probably need replacing. Oh, wait, no. And so if you're having a dreadful time getting your instrument in tune, that could be the cause.